Welcome to the topic Behaviorist Theories of Learning, Pavlov and Thorndike. Pavlov's classical conditioning. Pavlov, a Russian physiologist, won Nobel Prize in Physiology in 1904 for his research on digestion. He continued his research by measuring the secretion of digestive juice in dogs' stomach. One day, he noticed that a dog would salivate or secrete digestive juices as soon as it saw the lab worker who ordinarily brought the dogs their food. Because this secretion presumably depended on the dog's previous experiences, Pavlov called it psychological secretion. Pavlov called this phenomenon conditioning. Since the type of the conditioning emphasized was a classical one, quite different from the conditioning emphasized by other psychologists at the later stage, it has been renamed classical conditioning. Pavlovs Experiment. Pavlov tied a dog onto the experimental table, which was fitted with certain mechanically controlled devices. The dog was made comfortable and distractions were excluded as far as possible. The observer kept himself hidden from the view of the dog, but was able to view the result of the experiment by means of a set of mirrors. Arrangement was made to give meat to the dog. Every time the meat was presented, the bell was rung too. When the meat was presented, there was natural secretion of saliva from the mouth of the dog just at the mere sight of the meat. After that, a bell rang, but the dog didn't salivate at the sound of the bell. The activity of presenting the meat accompanied with the ringing of the bell was repeated several times. So the sound of the bell and sight of the meat got interconnected. Next time the dog was given no food, but the bell was rung. It was found that even in the absence of the meat, that is a natural stimulus, the ringing of the bell, that is the artificial stimulus, caused the dog to secrete the saliva, that is natural response. In this experiment, the dog learned to salivate at the sound of the bell. Establishment of this new artificial association is what is known as conditioning. The natural stimulus can thus be said to be unconditioned stimulus US, the natural response unconditioned response UR, the artificial stimulus the conditioned stimulus CS, and the response to the conditioned stimulus the conditioned response, that is CR. This kind of learning in terms of conditioned response was named as learning by conditioning. The process of strengthening a conditioned response through immediate association of US and CS is called learning by conditioning. Diagrammatic representation of Pavlov's experiment. Before conditioning, the meat, that is unconditioned stimulus, causes salivation, and the unconditional response, the salivation is the unconditioned response. The bell, that is a conditioned stimulus, causes no salivation. But during conditioning, both meat and bell, that is unconditioned stimulus and conditioned stimulus, together cause salivation. But after conditioning, the bell, that is conditioned stimulus, causes salivation, that is a conditioned response. Once Pavlov had demonstrated the manner in which classical conditioning occurs, inquisitive psychologists wondered what would happen after various changes in the procedures. Their investigations, prompted by practical concerns and theoretical concerns, have revealed many phenomena that are related to classical conditioning. Here are a few of the main ones. Reinforcement, extinction, and spontaneous recovery. The history of a simple conditioned reflex begins with its acquisition through repeated reinforcement, that is, the repeated following of the conditioned stimulus by the unconditioned stimulus and response at appropriate time intervals. When reinforcement is discontinued and the conditioned stimulus is presented alone, unaccompanied by the unconditioned stimulus, the conditioned response gradually diminishes and disappears, a process that is called experimental extinction. Suppose we classically condition a response and then extinguish it. Several hours or days later, we present the conditioned stimulus again. In many cases, the conditioned response will reappear. Stimulus generalization and discrimination. An individual who learns to respond to one stimulus will respond similarly to similar stimuli. However, it is difficult to specify the dimensions along which we should measure similarity. If one stimulus is followed by an unconditioned stimulus and another stimulus is not, the individual will come to discriminate between them. Educational implications of conditioning. Pavlov's classical conditioning has educational implications in terms of the presentation of appropriate stimuli in various learning situations. For example, the teacher shows the child the picture of a horse together with the written form of the word that is pronounced to. Also, the teacher asks the student to say horse every time when the picture of the horse is not presented but only the written word horse is shown. But the child responds to it by saying horse. He associates the written word horse with the picture of the horse and sound of the word. The conditioning process can help the teachers a lot for developing desirable habits, interests, and attitudes in children. Just as good habits can be cultivated in children by conditioning, and bad habits can be eliminated by disconditioning. Fears, phobias, and prejudices are acquired as a result of conditioning process. They can be cured by deconditioning and reconditioning by associating the objects that evokes fear continuously with a pleasant stimulus. Module 2, Thorndike's bone theory or trial and error theory. Shortly before Pavlov performed his innovative experiments, Edward L. Thorndike, Harvard graduate student, had begun to train and test cats in his basement. Saying that earlier experiments had dealt only with animal intelligence, never with animal stupidity, he devised a simple behaviorist explanation of learning. In one of his experiments, for instance, he put a hungry cat in a puzzle box. There was only one door which could be opened by correctly manipulating a latch. A fish was placed outside the box. The smell of the fish acted as a strong motive for the hungry cat to come out of the box. The situation is described by Thorndike himself as, it tries to cues through every opening. It claws and bites at the bars or wires. It thirsts its paws through any opening and claws at everything it reaches. In this way, it made a number of random movements, and in one of the random movements, the latch was manipulated accidentally. The cat came out and got its food. In another trial, the process was repeated. The cat was kept hungry and placed in the same puzzle box. The fish and its smell again worked as a motive for it to get out of the box. It again made random movements and frantic efforts, but this time it took less time to come out. In subsequent trials, such incorrect responses, biting, clawing, and dashing were gradually reduced, and the cat took less time on each succeeding trial. In due course, it was in a position to manipulate the latch as soon as it was put in the box. In this way, gradually, the cat learned the art of opening the door. The experiment sums up the following stages in the process of learning. Drive. In the present experiment, it was hunger and was intensified by the sight of the food. Goal. To get at the food by getting out of the box. Block. The cat was confined in the box with a closed door. Random movements. The cat persistently tried to come out of the box without knowing how. Chance success. As a result of this striving and random movements, the cat, by chance, succeeded in opening the door. Selection of proper movement. Gradually, the cat recognized the correct way to manipulate the latch. It selected the proper way of manipulating the latch out of its random movements. Fixation. At last, the cat learned the proper way to open the door by eliminating all the incorrect responses and fixing only the right response. Now, it was able to open the door without any error, or in other words, learn the correct way of opening the door. Module 3, Thorndike's Laws of Learning. Thorndike propounded the following laws of learning on the basis of his theoretical notions about the learning process. First one, the law of readiness. This law is indicative of the learner's state to participate in the learning process. Readiness, according to Thorndike, is preparation for action. It is essential for learning. If the child is ready to learn, he learns more quickly, effectively, and with greater satisfaction than if he is not ready to learn. This shows us not to force the child to learn if he is not ready, but also not to miss any opportunity of providing learning experiences if the child is prepared to learn. The right moments concern the learning situation and the learner's state of mind should be recognized, and maximum use should be made of this knowledge by the teacher. He should also make an attempt to motivate the students by stimulating their attention, interest, and curiosity. Second law, the law of effect. Learning can be said to have taken place properly when it results in satisfaction and the learner derives pleasure from it. In the situation when the child meets failure or is dissatisfied, the progress of learning is blocked. All pleasant experiences have a lasting influence and are remembered for a long time, while the unpleasant ones are soon forgotten. Therefore, the satisfaction and dissatisfaction, pleasure or displeasure resulting from a learning experience decides the degree of its effectiveness. This law emphasizes the role of rewards and punishment in the process of learning. Getting a reward as a result of some learning motivates and encourages the child to proceed with increased intensity and enthusiasm, while punishment of any kind discourages him and creates distaste for that learning. Third law, the law of exercise. This law has two subparts, the law of use and the law of disuse, which may be stated as the law of use. When a modifiable connection is made between a situation and response, that connection strength is, other things being equal, increased. The law of disuse. When a modifiable connection is not made between a situation and response during a length of time, that connection strength is decreased. As will be seen, the law of use refers to the strengthening of a connection with practice, and the law of disuse to the weakening of connection of forgetting when the practice is discontinued. It can be said, in short, that the law of exercise as a whole emphasizes the need for repetition. All these three laws, the law of readiness, the law of effect, and the law of exercise, are significant in many kinds of learning in our life. The law may be applied to the following proverbs and maxims. You can lead a horse to the water, but you cannot make it drink. Nothing succeeds like success. Practice makes a man perfect. Module 4, Supplementary Theories of Learning. E.L. Thorndike, in addition to his 3 basic laws of learning, developed 5 principles of learning, which are as follows. First one, the principle of multiple responses. This principle states that animal or man may try many responses before attempting the right response through the process of trial and error. Trial and error learning involves many factors as motives, a difficulty or barrier, and sometimes aimless attempts to achieve the goal, a successful trial, and elimination of unproductive responses and consolidation of successful responses. The significance of trial and error learning in education is that the learner gets wide experience and a chance to experiment themselves. They learn from their own errors. The teacher provides help to the students when they need it. Psychologists now agree that all experiences are educative, including the committing of errors. Second one, the principle of mental set. Mental set refers to the predisposition to act in a given way. It is more or less temporary condition of one's attitudes, feelings, and interest. For learning to occur, positive mental set in pupils is an essential condition. The teachers can prepare students for various activities in advance. He can encourage them for participating in different activities in home, school and community. The material to be taught must be meaningful. The emotional atmosphere of the classroom must be congenial. Students must feel that they have control over their future activities. Teachers' assistant to develop positive attitude is very helpful for pupils. Pupils have been known to develop favorable attitudes towards learning merely on the basis of knowing that the teacher is concerned about them and that the teacher desires to be of assistance. Third one, principle of partial activity. According to Thorndike, a response made only to parts or aspects of a total matter than to the totality is the principle of partial activity. In responding partial of the total activity is pre-pertinent. For example, a baby will respond to his mother whether she is in formal dress or casual dress, whether at home or on the street. Fourth one, principle of analogy or assimilation. The principle states that when individual is faced with a new situation for which he has no natural or learned response, the response he makes will resemble an earlier response to a similar situation. The teacher can make use of this principle in his classroom teaching in the following manner. The teacher must provide similarities between the new and the old, the importance of leading from the known to the unknown, and the usefulness of bringing textbook abstraction to life by relating them to the experiences of the learners. The teacher must provide identity between historical events and present-day events. The principle of analogy is explained in unit approach. The unit approach is that the individual learner makes decisions, grows and develops democratic points of view. The principle of associative shifting. This principle states that any response of which a learner is capable may be attached to any stimulation to which he is sensitive. A common school example would be reading where certain combinations of letters through repetition and reinforcement call to mind highly specific things. The letters HORSE are attached to a large solid hoofed grass eating animal. Associative shifting may then cause these same letters to mean a device on which wood may be held while it is being sowed. The teacher can use this principle in the following ways. Habits, attitudes and interests that children develop in school inevitably form the working equipment with which they will perform their functions as adults. Respect for objective viewpoint, systematic methods of problem solving, concern for others and effective work habits should be developed in students. Thorndike's contribution in the field of learning. Thorndike's theory of trial and error is of great significance in the field of education. It explains the process of learning among animals and human beings on the basis of actual experiments. Not only human learning but animal learning also follows the path of trial and error. A child, when confronted with a mathematical problem, tries several possibilities before he arrives at the correct solution. Even discoveries and inventions in the various fields of knowledge are the result of the trial and error process. For example, Archimedes was confronted with a problem set by his emperor. There was a drive in that he would be beheaded if he failed to find a solution to the problem. There was a block in that he could not think of any solution. The problem was difficult. He went on experimenting and made a number of attempts, that is trials, to solve the problem. One day, while having a bath, he met with accidental success, and this led to the formulation of the law of floating bodies. Excessive indulgence in the methods of trial and error without caring for the development a logical line of thought should not, however, be encouraged under any circumstances. We cannot reduce human learning to a mechanical and random process as advocated by this theory. It must be supported by reason, understanding and insight. Trials and practice coupled with insight will make the process of learning more effective than either of the methods adopted singly. Thorndike's laws of learning carry some useful implications. These are: if one wants to learn something, one should be prepared oneself for it by first understanding fully its importance. An instructor or a teacher, on the other hand, in order to teach effectively, must try to prepare the learner by bringing the mechanism of motivation into play. Whatever we want to learn or teach, we must first identify the aspects which are to be remembered and those which may be forgotten. After this, we may try to strengthen the links or connections between the stimuli and responses of those things which are to be remembered through repetition, drill and reward. For forgetting, the connection should be weakened through disuse and unpleasant results. What is being taught or learned at any one time should be linked with the past experiences and learning on the one hand and with the future learning on the other, in order to benefit from the mechanism of association, connection or bonds in the process of learning. The learner should try to see the similarities and dissimilarities between the different kinds of responses to stimuli, and by comparison and contrast try to apply the learning from one situation to another similar situation. The learner should be encouraged to do his task independently. He must try various solutions of the problem before arriving at the correct one. But in every case, he should be careful not to waste his time and energy by proceeding blindly and repeating his mistake. In short, Thorndike's theory of trial and error learning and his laws of learning have been a significant contribution to the field of learning. It has made learning purposeful and goal-directed and has emphasized the importance of motivation. It has also given an impetus to drill and practice and highlighted the psychological importance of rewards and praise in the field of learning. Let's summarize the major points discussed in this session. This unit has given description of major behaviorist theories. It includes Pavlov's classical conditioning theory, Thorndike's trial and error theory. Though all these theories come under a single title behaviorist, their differences cannot be ignored. These theories have wider educational implication. The principles of classical conditioning are found to be very useful for the modification of behavior. Thorndike's laws of learning have made learning purposeful and goal-directed and has emphasized the importance of motivation. Now, you can attempt to answer the following questions given here. First one, what is spontaneous recovery? Second one, what are the educational implications of the law of readiness? Third one, what is the principle of multiple responses? Fourth one, why Thorndike's theory is called trial and error theory? For further understanding and reading, you can go through the books given here. Rescorla, R.A. in the year 1973, Pavlovian Conditioning, It's Not What You Think It Is, American Psychologist, number 43 and page numbers from 151 to 160. Seligman, M.E.P. in the year 1972, On the Generality of the Laws of Learning, Psychological Review, 77, page numbers from 406 to 418. Slavin, R.E. in the year 1994, Educational Psychology, Theory and Practice, USA, Allen and Bacon. Mangal, S.K., 2008, Advanced Educational Psychology, 2nd edition, New Delhi, Prentice Hall of India. Hope that the session was beneficial to you. We will meet again with another topic. Till then, take care.